Very good afternoon, friend. On behalf of CMS Vatavaran, I'm Sabyasachi Bharti. I welcome you all here again with a live Q&A session with one of the most prominent green filmmaking name in our country. And as you know that we are observing and organizing a 18-day long biodiversity celebration where we are doing a series of things like we are doing workshops, we are doing training sessions, we are doing filmmaking sessions. We are organizing a daily film screening and a live session with these prominent green filmmakers of our country. Then we will have a special session with Oscar winner Swati Tyagarajan on 8th. So it will be a bouquet of programs which we will be doing. And the aim of all these programs is to talk about the biodiversity conservation and why we want to talk about biodiversity conservation, because this is the most important question of this in this point of time, because the pandemic which we are going through, CMS Vatavaran feels that it's not only a health question, but rather it is biodiversity, shamelessly destruction of the biodiversity, and it is the result of these shameless blatant destruction of biodiversity. So yesterday we had Akanksha Damini Joshi with us. Today we had another great filmmaker, a trendsetter in green filmmaking. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly welcome with me Akanksha Sood Singh. Hello Akanksha, welcome to
Hello,
the live questions.
Sabyasachi. Thank you so
How
much for having me here. How are you?
are you? I'm fine. How are you?
Very well so far. All good.
So we daily see the Facebook post of yours where you are enjoying with your kids, and the paintings and the poem and all these mischievous works which they are doing. We are really enjoying it, and I really wait every day for the next posting that what he is doing.
Yes,
So
he's become a bit of a celebrity, and every time it's not a regular update, I start getting very frantic messages from people saying, "Is everything all right? He's not said anything today."
yeah, and Akanksha, in these pandemic days, we are so depressed that we try to find these kind of positive things in around so that it can make us positive, and that positiveness comes from these kind of postings which we are doing. Thanks. Yeah, it helps us a lot to smile in these doom situation. So uh, friends, before I start talking with Akanksha about her process of filmmaking, I just want to know that the CMS Vatavaran and Akanksha has a long, we had a long relationship. We had so many films from Akanksha, and she won several awards in CMS Vatavaran film festivals. So Akanksha, let us start with the old stories, the old films. So as we were discussing before, the session, that the Pad Piper was your first film as a director, and you won national award for that. So so before that, what in what capacity you were working, and why you decided to select Pad Piper as a subject of your first film, and Wobi, it's a feature length film, which is feature length film. It if it's good, it's very good. Otherwise, if you miss a point, it becomes so boring. So it's like it's a very difficult thing to make a feature length film, and on that type of subject. So why and how you decided to make Pad Piper?
So, going back into when I started, I was very fortunate, and I think the opportunities that came before me were very conducive. And at a very right age of 21 years is when I started. I got into wildlife filmmaking. As a
Mhm.
child growing up, it was something that I always wanted to do. But back in the 80s and 90s, honestly, there was no way of knowing how to.
Mhm.
Television came into my life when I was 6 years old, and I was very, very enamored. I was a teenager when cable television came into my life, and that changed the game for me. That's when
Mhm.
um, documentary films, wildlife programming came into my life, and that was the space I wanted to be in. But growing up in Delhi, large part in Delhi, from coming from Bombay, large part in Delhi, I didn't know what to do, how to go about getting into films. Bollywood was the only avenue, so to say, that was
Yeah.
available, and that was not something that
Yes.
I wanted to do. So
Mhm.
I did everything, school, I had science, moved on to, at graduation level, I studied economics and went on to do my post grad, but left it in between because I got a job with Ogilvy and Mather in Bombay in
Okay.
advertising.
Yeah.
But quit that also and joined the PR industry under
Mm.
one of the Lipcherian's companies. And I was doing very well. I was very young. I was just out of college, and I think it was in the first year of my working career, so to say. I met my husband Praveen, and
Mhm.
that opened the floodgates for me for getting into wildlife and kind of bringing together, making the reality of the dream that I've always had. He was back then a
Mhm.
student in natural history filmmaking, studying in the US, and it was his student film on leopards
Yes.
that I assisted on. From then on, I largely worked with a production house based in Delhi for almost a decade. I did a lot of programming, different kinds of genres, feature films, ad films, studio based shows, science programming. And because I'm not from any film school, for me,
Mhm.
everything, all the learning was on the job, you know.
Mhm.
And increasingly, as I picked up skills required to survive, and required to work in this industry, I figured that now that I know so much, I got to start moving into wildlife.
Mhm.
And that's when I worked on, well, the first few films that I worked on. Um, as I kind of gained experience, I started off as an intern, and by the
Mhm.
time, you know, uh, I did my first uh, uh, tiger film as a serious player, a top level player. Um, I did three tiger films after that. Then I left that company. I worked for another Bombay-based company and
Mhm.
did a lot more films. That's when Tigress Blood happened.
Yeah.
Tigress Blood happened. Manas happened, and the Ghee
Mhm.
film Wandering Lions happened.
Mhm.
Having done so
Uh,
much work. Sorry.
Friends, just a second, because you talked about Tigress Blood. Friends, you will be happy to know that Tigress Blood won Best Editing Award non-fiction in the 62nd National Film Awards, and the award has been given by the President of India, and it has been also nominated for the best film in the Indian Panorama section of the 8th CMS Children's Film Festival 2015. Yeah, sorry, please go ahead.
So, having done a body of work in various capacities, starting off as an intern and also being one of the top line producers in the country, um, I increasingly realized that I had to do something of my own. That's when it was, I think, in 2011 when I heard of the Asian pitch, and we were looking for a story idea for the Asian pitch.
Mhm.
When I read about Arunachalam Muruganandam and
Yes.
his low cost sanitary pad making machine, and I thought it was a great human interest story. Uh, and I pitched it. I went and I met Muruganandam, and I did a small pitch day, put proposal together, went to Singapore, pitched it, and it got commissioned.
Wow.
And that film was my directorial debut in every
Mhm.
possible way. It won me the first national award. It won a lot of awards internationally. But
Yes.
winning the national award, I think, did it for me. And I said that now is the time for me to start my own work. I cannot be working under different banners. I cannot be
Mhm.
working for other producers,
Mhm.
because eventually, it's the production house that kind of carries a lot more weightage if it's a big production house. And I said, if I don't do it now, the time will never, never come. So it was a
Yeah.
good paying job that I had, which I quit back in 2011, 12. And I started my own company, the Gaia
Mhm.
People.
Mhm.
And
You started
yeah,
it with
so
your husband.
initially he
Yeah.
wasn't a part of it,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I think about 2 years later, he
Yeah.
joined me. We've always wanted to work together, but it was just never very conducive. But then, yes.
It's a very different kind of name. It's a very philosophical name, Gaia. So is it the same Gaia? Like why this name? What was the concept? Because name means a lot.
Yes.
So why
So
Gaia people?
Gaia people, actually, my husband came up with this name, and
Okay.
there was a lot of brainstorming, going on around the name for a production company that does wildlife films. And
Mhm.
Gaia, in Greek mythology, is Mother Earth,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we are her children. We are the people.
Yeah.
So it's the people working for Mother Earth, the Gaia people.
It's
Everything
like
that we
Pachamama kind of concept.
yes,
Dharti Ma.
yes, the
Yeah.
Dima.
Yes. Yes.
So that's how that came into being.
Yeah, and okay, so you had done your directorial debut in Pat Piper, and you won so many awards. Like I can talk about only three. That is the best 61st National Film Award in the category of best film on science and technology, and then it was invited by UN for the 17th United Nations Association Film Festival. It's a very prestigious festival, no doubt. Then it was nominated for the best film on livelihood at CMS Vatavaran Film Festival 2015. Then Tigress Blood. Uh, then in 2017 there was a one very beautiful film on Manas. So how you are related with the Manas, because it has been directed by your husband. So you were what, line producer,
I
production
was
head?
the field producer and
Yeah.
the thermal camera operator for the film. So
Mm.
Manas was part of a two-part series called India Night on Earth. This was a co-production with a UK-based production company called Ammonite Films. Yeah, and
Swati Tyagarajan is writing Akanksha Sood Singh is amazing. Thank you, Swati, for watching. And yes, we will have a session with Swati also. So yes, she's saying Akanksha Sood Singh is amazing, and I have 100% agree, no doubt. She is
thank
amazing.
you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Um, So, so you know, uh, we wanted to do something using obviously the best technology, and we
Mhm.
also wanted to film at night in India, which is not being done. It's been
Yes.
done a lot abroad, especially in Africa, for various reasons. The
Mhm.
landscape is very different. It's easy to follow animals, and also, of course, in terms of permissions and bureaucracy, I think it's much easier to do such work in Africa, but India it was
Mhm.
very difficult.
Yeah.
We took almost a year to get permissions. The idea was
Okay.
to do a three-part series: one in
Mhm.
Gir, one in
Mhm.
Manas, and
Mhm.
one in the Chambal. But
Mhm.
Chambal didn't materialize for various. There were a lot of risk factors associated with it, which it didn't materialize. But Gir and Manas came out, and Gir was the first film that we shot. It was difficult convincing the forest department as to what we're trying to do, because if you look at it traditionally, filming permissions are not given from sunset to sunrise. It's
Mhm.
always sunrise to sunset,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
convincing them that we're going to be showcasing, uh, you know, life in the forest, especially with big cats, because
Mhm.
it's at night when things play out. you know you're traditionally been conditioned to see films that start at sunrise, and here is the natural world, and the sun sets and everyone assumes that all the animals go to sleep, especially
Mhm.
especially
Yeah.
people who are not accustomed to seeing films in the natural world,
Yeah.
or have a association, a connection with the natural world. The general opinion is that, oh yeah, the forest goes silent at night, but no, that's really the time it comes alive, and
Mhm.
that's the story we wanted to tell.
Okay.
Geese, especially because it's not just lions living inside the national park. There's a great
Mhm.
population doing very well outside the park and living in complete harmony with the people. There's no conflict, so to say. And how is that possible in the 21st century? It was a great story.
Mhm.
Manas was obviously the second choice. We didn't want to go to Kaziranga because personally we all feel that Manas is a much better park.
Mhm.
It has a very beautiful history, and
Mhm.
also a very ghastly past, and
Mhm.
one needs to talk about it because Also because it's lived in the shadow of, the famous Kaziranga for too long. And
Hmm.
personally, it's much better than Kaziranga in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, taking the Gujarat model of permissions, we approached the Assam Forest Department. It was much
Hmm.
easier
Hmm.
because we had a model in place to showcase them. We had something
Hmm.
to show as to what we're doing. Our
Hmm.
technology that we used was completely non invasive. There were no artificial lights. It was either
Hmm.
natural light, moonlight, or thermal light if and when required. And both these films again did very well. The key film, in fact, was also a finalist at Wildscreen, uh,
Hmm.
and at Jackson Hole, and also at Vatavaran.
Yes.
Both the films did very well. Yes.
Mhm. Okay. So, okay. Then we move to your another film, Mrityu Bose, The Dead Feast. Friends, Mrityu Bose won 65th National Film Award for Best Editing, Non-Feature, and this is award given by President of India. So yes, third national award. Great. So how Mrityu Bose happened, and please do tell us about Mrityu Bose, because like we wanted to watch the film, but it's not possible. But as you promised that we will be able to screen the film very soon, so that will be a wonderful opportunity to watch everyone this film. So what was Mrityu Bhoj and how you decided to do it? Because again, it's a taboo subject, like uh, doing not doing Mrityu Bhoj is big thing, part of the karma kanda of the Hindu rituals. It's a big ritual. So why and how you decided? And
So it was Mrityu Bhoj was an idea for the Asian pitch.
Mhm.
The Asian pitch is a platform that doesn't look at very niche subjects like wildlife. They like to look at human interest films.
Yeah.
And it was when we were researching for this, a friend of ours had come up with a proposal, and he shared it with us. And he said, why don't you look at it? And it was based on a small little newspaper article from the Times of India, that
Mhm.
essentially one little column that talked about this one policeman in the Chambal area who had seen
Mhm.
a pregnant woman wow the child, the unborn child, to a zamindar, to a landlord, and saying that this is the only way we can repay our debt. And he was completely moved by it, and he decided that it was all because one ceremony had to be done in the family. And it's a ceremony that, at least as Hindus, we all have seen. It's
Yes. Yes.
after the passing away of someone in the family on the
Yes.
13th day.
Yeah.
There is a festival, that's a ceremony that's done. It's called Tervi.
Yes.
There is a
There.
Chautha and there is a
Yeah.
Tervi, fourth
There.
day
Yes.
ceremony, and the 13th day
Yes.
ceremony is
Yes.
the Tervi. So, from where we come, as privileged as we are, and our understanding in today's time of our culture and of our traditions and of our religious beliefs and systems, you know, honestly, I have never given this ceremony much of a thought. But even for me to read this and say that, why would someone take money for a Terevi ceremony? You know, uh,
Hmm.
and we reached out to this inspector, and I went and met him, and I understood
Mhm.
the gravity of the situation. It's not just a religious belief. It's got a lot to do with caste. It's got a lot to do with, our culture, our belief system, gender. It's a culture that crisscrosses too many paths.
Yes.
And for people in rural India, which is really a very, very large population of people, we are minorities living in cities, I say. Uh, this ceremony has a lot of importance because the amount they can spend in feeding people basically goes to show their standing in society that they live in the society that they live in.
Yes.
It
Yes.
doesn't matter if he's an upper class or a lower class person. अगर हमने उनकी तेरहवीं में खाया है, हमें खिलाना पड़ेगा.
जी, बिल्कुल सही आपने कहा. And
दैट इज
I,
द बिलीफ. और अगर
yeah.
हम नहीं करेंगे, नहीं
Hmm.
करेंगे, तो हमारे से लोग नहीं बात करेंगे. हमारे साथ
बिल्कुल.
कोई उठेगा बैठेगा नहीं.
Yes.
Marriage is very different. Marriage is a celebration. It's a time for feasting. People come if they can come. If they can't come, they can't come. But really, nobody misses a tervi.
Yes, nobody
You
misses
know,
that. And it's a
especially in
must thing
rural,
that you have to do.
you
It's a
have to
must
do
thing.
it. You
Yeah.
become an outcast if you do not do it.
You take a loan, you sell your jameen, anything, but you have to do it.
And I also figured that there really is a pattern as to how it goes. For a poor
Mhm.
person, you know, he ends up, and it's not that he can decide how many people are going to be fed. Oh, but we know like 20 people in the village, so we'll feed these 20 people. No. There's a priest who will come, who will go through some texts, and based on a whole lot of his version of how what kind of a karma the deceased had, figures out how many people have to be fed. So
Yes.
sometimes it's the number of people, sometimes it's the number of villages.
Yes. In our side, it's like Sagargama means and then Baragama means 12 villages.
Yes.
And you have, if you are doing this, like you will be a big person, you and everyone will talk about you or something like that. Yeah, best of money and all these things. I sometimes.
So, and I think in the types of Terevi ceremonies,
Yeah.
at least in this belt, the one really drastic one is called the Chul Nyota.
Okay.
Basically meaning that we're having a Terevi on X date. On that particular date, everybody from every possible place around this village or around my house is invited. Nobody is going to light the fire in their kitchen. Everyone is going to come and eat. You can take an estimate, okay, if 3,000 people coming, but there have been cases where you've actually prepared for 3,000 people and 8,000 people have turned up. And
Yes.
in a situation like this, where a family's annual income is say 1 lakh rupees, they got to do a ceremony one day, a few hours, probably 4 hours or 6 hours. They have to shell out almost 3, 4, sometimes 5 lakhs, depending on the number of people they have to feed.
Yes. Yes.
So it's quite devastating, and it's not been documented very well, at least in this region, as to what have been the repercussions of this.
Mm.
It starts off with obviously you trying to sell your cattle off, your livestock. You will probably mortgage a part of your land. You'll probably
Yes.
sell off the jewelry in the house,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
But if the amount is much more and you are not being able to pay back, in the set installments, in the number of years that has been decided between wherever you've taken the loan from, you'll stop your children's education because you cannot afford them. You need everybody in the family to start working.
Yeah.
You know, you and what eventually happens is it becomes such a burden that
Mm.
the person will either die, commit suicide, or the entire family overnight will leave everything and move into the city.
Oh.
You know, even if they've had land, they will just give it up overnight. They'll just leave because they cannot bear the burden of paying anymore.
I,
And it's
I, I,
coming, coming to this.
yeah, sorry, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, coming to the city overnight for a person like that, for a family like that, from really rural India, and I'm telling you, Chambal is very, very backward.
Yes, it is.
I met a lady over there. When I started filming, uh, I I I have an umbilical hernia, and uh, I was advised not to kind of go into the field till I don't get an operation done. And I was like, okay, if I will know if the problem starts, there'll be a pain, and I'll probably know, and I'm sure there might be some kind of a government hospital around which I can reach out to. When I went there on my recce, one of the first things I did was looking for a hospital. There wasn't any. At least this part where we were filming, the nearest hospital was 3 hours away. And with the problem that I have, 3 hours is very, very, very a long time. Secondly, I was given a list of painkillers to take just for emergency. And when I went to the local market, they were those medicines were not available, and there were these fake medicines, which, trust me, I've never heard of. And I met a lady there who had a a child delivered. She'd had a cesarean operation, and she'd never been able to get up after that. She was bedridden for about 12 years. And I was like, I don't think so. I want to be in this place with a medical condition. I fix myself and then come here, kind of come back.
Wow. We have to watch this documentary
Mrityu Bhoj,
because
I also consider Mrityu Bhoj as I've done so much of work, but in terms of the storytelling and the camera work and the editing and how the whole film has to come together, I really like Mrityu Bhoj. It's one of my finest works till date.
okay, so yeah, certainly we will have have a program around the Metro Board, and we will do a special screening as you had already promised.
Thank you. Yes, I will.
Now coming to your work, which I think you has make it's a strength setter, I can say. This is on the brink. So now you had completed with the season 1 and season 2. Today, what we are screening is one of the season 1's episode on the Great Indian Bus. So GIB. So how and uh, like why you thought of the series, and then how easy or difficult to first get funded, because funding is a big problem uh, for everyone, whether it is a big filmmaker, documentary, environmental filmmaker, or a small one. So, how you thought of it, and how you think of getting to someone and get fund for it, and then how how it was easy or difficult to make, because being a proud mom of two children and then going into wild, because these things are not in the city, that you go from one airport to second airport, take a cab and then shoot and come back. So how the journey started, and then you have completed season 1, and now you have completed season 2, and what about in future, are you going to have another season?
So, for 15 years almost now, we have done very premium quality natural history content out of India, focusing largely on doing blue chip natural history work,
Yes.
and covering the species that really sell, which is big cats, elephants, leopards, and tigers and rhinos. And really, we've done everything when it comes to
Mhm,
blue chip and when it comes to premium natural history work.
mhm,
It's our own films out of India that we have made. They've been commissioned and by networks abroad. We had, I think, reached a stage where we said that this is not enough. We really need to do a lot more. There is so much living in the shadow of the tiger where forget, outsiders, even Indians don't know. And there are animals, there are species, there are habitats that need to be talked about. There are people in this country who are doing some incredible work that need to be shown.
yeah.
And we were very clear that it's going to be a conservation series.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm,
we pitched the idea to the network, and they quite liked it. And we also got a very young, very talented filmmaker and presenter, Malaika, to come on board
Malaika.
as yes,
Yes, yes.
as the the presenter for the first season.
Mhm,
And unfortunately for the network, they didn't have enough funding,
mhm,
and they said that, okay, why don't you go look for funding for this and see what happens. It was almost, I think, 6 or 7 months that we kind of, between the network and us, just talking
mhm.
about the project and trying to figure out how to raise funds for it, because conservation, honestly speaking, is not something that sells. Increasingly, as we
Yes.
move ahead, conservation is not something that people are watching. It's not
Mhm,
something networks like to commission. Yes, as an
mhm,
acquisition, some networks will still show conservation films.
mhm,
So there was a lot to kind of, in terms of storytelling, a lot of cliches
mhm.
had to be kind of broken. But that was the
Yeah.
second part of it. The first part was actually raising funds for doing something like this. Who will gamble? If not a network, who will gamble
Mhm.
their money? You know,
Mhm.
I was very lucky to meet my co-production partner now, the Habitats Trust and HCL Group. They they were just about starting the Habitats Trust, which is their conservation arm, and they came on board as co-production partners. So we are 50-50 co-production partners. They've essentially funded it, and it was something that worked for them and for us. And together, we kind of built on the brink to showcase it as a conservation series, not try to make it into something just because we wanted to be out there and make it look as glamorous and glitzy as other programmings, just to try to fit in. We wanted to showcase the
Mhm.
reality.
Mhm.
So I think the biggest challenge was storytelling. You know,
Mhm.
uh, and it was a gamble. So we had Malaika as a presenter because that was one thing that we wanted to show, that there are faces in India that
Yeah.
can be on-screen presenters. We
Mhm.
wanted to say that we started off being an all-women crew because it's not something very easy to do, but it was again a very conscious decision to at least make the field crew all completely a women's crew, because I think when women come together and work, the exchange of energy is much, much better, especially
Mhm.
in the field in terms of working together. There's a lot that can be done. So that's how On the Brink came. This first season, it was 8 episodes, half hours, different species and habitats in each,
Yeah.
and obviously showcasing the people working at the ground level.
Mhm.
Who are working either in science work or research or conservation. For those species. Um, it did well, and we went on to do season two. And in season two, we decided to kind of break another stereotype, which is that people in science from India cannot be presenters, on screen presenters. So it was a conscious decision that this time around we will not
Mhm.
have an anchor. But
Mhm.
these conservationists, these scientists, are going to be the anchors of their episodes.
Mhm.
And so season two is going to release. It's already released in Australia and rest of Asia outside India. It's
Mhm.
going to come on National Geographic very soon in India,
Mhm.
probably at the end of this month or maybe sometime next month. So season two
Mhm.
again. This time we've done 10 episodes. They're half an hour each, and the storytelling has also evolved a lot. There's no presenter, but the scientists we follow are the presenters of their show.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
much more personal. The connection between human and animal this time that you will see, it's very, very different from season one. And yes, season three is also going to come.
Wow.
We've started work. We're in pre-production for season three, but right now I think it's not very conducive to be out until all of us are vaccinated.
Yes.
A large part of the country is vaccinated, so we're taking this time to basically, do all our groundwork and pre-production work, and hopefully
Wow.
the end of the year or sometime next year we'll start filming.
Yeah. So now, apart from this film, a few things just I wanted to know, like the time when you entered into the filmmaking, especially the kind of film you are making, there were very, even today, there are very few female directors. And still, this wildlife filmmaking or green filmmaking is something like a man dominated, filmmaking area. Even the popular film itself in Mumbai also, in Bollywood also, you can hardly, you can have one, five, six, seven, eight, something like that, film directors, female film directors. So now, does the journey of a female green filmmaker or a wildlife film maker is difficult than their male counterparts, or is it same? Because now you are managing, you have a mother of two children, and then you have to go to the jungles and the plateaus and here there. So managing, how it is easy, like easy or difficult, how you manage, and what, and if a woman want to be, or a girl want to come to the screen filmmaking or the kind of filmmaking you are doing, what you will say to her?
Okay, so I'll answer this in parts. Um,
Yes.
I'll start with your first question as to how easy or difficult is it as a woman, natural history filmmaker in India.
Yes.
It is very tough. When I started out 20 years ago, honestly, there was nobody that I could talk to.
Yes.
There, I don't remember anyone at that time, a known name out of India. Of course, there were the Baby Brothers and Mike Pandey. They were known faces, but when I started out, I really didn't know what to do, where to go, who to talk to. Everything I learned, I was very clear I don't want to go to film school. So everything I learned on the job. What I figured while I was working early on in my career is that when productions come to India, when foreign productions come to India, they look for talent in India, which is specifically camera people.
One thing I want to just not want to know, like you said that you don't want to go to film schools. Why so? Because the film, if I want to become a filmmaker, if I want to learn the trade and the grammar and the mathematics of filmmaking, where should I go? I certainly I will go to the film schools, but you are saying that no to film school. Why that?
Okay, so personally, I have never been very fond of the education system in our country. You know, I think I was in grade 11 or 12, very early on, where I kind of started doing part-time jobs.
Mhm.
My time through college, I worked on the side, and when I went to do my post grad, I got into O&M first as an intern, and then was made permanent there for a while. I was there. I figured that all that I had learned really
Mhm.
had no practical application in what I was doing or what I was doing. You know,
Mhm.
uh, practically speaking, the only thing that I actually did which translated into work was my advertising course in Bombay. I got a job in an advertising agency, but when I was working there, I just I just couldn't deal with what I was being taught.
Mhm.
you know uh, there was a huge gap, there was a huge mismatch. It was very theoretical versus what plays out practically. So I think I was coming from there that I didn't want to go to any film school. Now in these years that I have been in industry, which is about 20 years, I say one thing, that if you can get yourself to work under, intern under, be an assistant to some really good filmmakers, and now there are a lot of filmmakers, some very good, talented, specialized people like either a cinematographer or an editor or a sound recordist or a graphic artist, if you can get to work under them, intern with them, and you can learn on the job, it's much more practical. Yes, it's probably time consuming. You might not earn for a while, but it's a much better and a practical way of learning. Yet I now say that, for a technical skill, for example, camera, or for example, editing, yes, film school or professional training is something you should consider.
Mhm.
You want to be a director, you may or may not want to go to film school. Interning under directors might give you that kind of understanding and skill set, but you need to know, as a director, it does not mean that you should not know editing or any other, or camera work for that matter. But it's not that you got to go to film school where you should professionally learn all this, but you should be aware of how things work in those departments also. For me, filmmaking has always been teamwork. I don't think so I can ever work independently on my own, produce, direct, camera, sound, everything. I can't do that. I
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
work as a team, and I like to bring in a lot of professionals, freelancers, newcomers who I can train, and kind of get them interested in this. So yeah, I mean, I was against film school, but now I say, if you really want specific technical talent, maybe consider either film school or professional training for it.
Okay. So now coming to my question, like we were talking about how easy or difficult for a woman to come into the natural history filmmaking. Way.
Yeah, so 20 years back, like I said, it was very tough. I didn't really
Mhm.
have anyone, and uh, there was no one even in the family who was aware of, so to say, wildlife filmmaking as a course, as a career option. Uh, I I I realized that whenever productions happen, most of the productions at that time were happening, by production companies from abroad coming into India. There was not anyone really doing natural history films in the country, making their
Mhm.
own films. But whenever
Mhm.
these production companies came into India, they looked for uh, local talent like camera people, which was again a very male-dominated, setup at that time, and they
Mhm.
looked for line producers, people who could arrange everything from there. And I kind of moved in there. I became a line producer for natural history productions happening out of India. uh, that's somehow where I kind of found my niche and moved up from there. you know Getting to work with production companies that come from abroad, I think kind of also gave me that kind of skill set which I lacked because I didn't go to professional film school. I
Mhm.
picked up a lot more practical way, very professional way of learning. So when I started my own work, I was able to adapt and bring all of that I had learned from these companies into my work. All right. It's always been tough, firstly, because a lot of times people think that as a woman, you can't be in the wild, you won't be able to survive. They think that you can't carry heavy load, you can't carry a camera, you can't carry a tripod. It's if a situation goes bad or if something goes wrong, you will not be able to fend for yourself. How will you survive? You know, but that's not true. 20 years ago till now, a lot of things have changed. But, you know, I wouldn't say the overall perception has changed. It is
Mhm.
changing. It's very
Yeah.
dynamic. It's changing.
Mhm.
A lot more younger people are coming in this industry, which is great.
Yes.
And a lot more women are coming into this,
Yeah.
which is very, very good. And personally, it's a very personal thing. I feel more women coming in brings a very, very great style of storytelling. It's more empathetic, it's more fact factually based, it's more creative. And as you get older, as women get older, with their experience and they evolve much better as storytellers. So,
Okay.
uh, so yeah, it is still tough, but it's much easier than it was when I started out.
Yeah.
uh,
So.
there's always been this constant thing about trying to prove yourself. Even today, I feel that I see it in a lot of youngsters. They have to, women, the girls have to work much more in trying to prove themselves, uh,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
and it's more difficult. But I think it's all going to change as more and more people come into this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if someone wants to be a natural history filmmaker in India, some if young guy, what he or she should do, like what are the ways, kahan
I
pade,
think
kidhar jaye, kind of thing.
I think there are a couple of things to this. It really depends on what you really want to do. There are so many avenues. You can be a filmmaker, which is a very broad
Mhm.
thing. You know, you could be specifically a cinematographer, a camera person. You could
Mhm.
be someone involved just in post.
Mhm.
You could be involved in research. You could be
Mhm.
involved in production. And
Mhm.
usually, when it comes to filmmaking, films in general,
Mhm.
non-fiction, when I'm talking about documentary films, the
Mhm.
entry level position is always either in research or it is in being a production assistant on a
Mhm.
project. So I think if you don't want to study, and you want to explore what this is before you kind of make that investment into a higher education in film studies, I think
Mhm.
the first step should naturally be two things. Intern under someone, work on a project. If it's someone in your family, someone you know through somebody, some friends or someone in the family, somebody, if you can get to kind of just intern or be around on a project as it's happening, it's a huge learning experience because then you know whether you want to make that investment to going into film school. And I think
Mhm.
the second thing that you need to do is understand the wild. It's not
Okay.
about just picking up a camera and going and filming. you know you've
Mhm.
got to understand nature, you've got to understand animal behavior, you've got to understand what what is the role that each thing in an ecosystem plays. Because you could be making a film on a tiger, but you cannot isolate the langurs and the deer and the trees and the water bodies from it's not just the
Yeah.
tiger, there is a lot more to it that makes the ecology, the surrounding, the environment, the habitat of a
Yeah.
tiger.
Indeed.
So understanding that, understanding animal behavior is also very important. And the third thing is watch a lot of films. Films that are
Okay.
very, very good. films that are not so good, even bad films. Because only if you watch a bad film, you realize why it's bad. You
Mm, mm,
yourself realize why it's bad. It didn't appeal to you. The storytelling style didn't appeal to you, or the anchor didn't appeal to you, or the overall, the way it was edited didn't appeal to you. Something will come out of it, and you will try not to do that in your own ways of making films. So it's a combination of these three things as a starting point. I say, uh,
mhm.
when you want to come in, it's a combination of these three factors. I think once you intern, when you get an understanding of how things play out, it's very different to work in fiction, which would essentially mean, a Bollywood kind of fiction, and it's very, very different to work in non-fiction.
Yes,
Within
yes.
non-fiction also, there is a whole lot of genres, so to say, that one can look up. So
Mhm,
wildlife is extremely specialized. It's very niche, and not too many people do it. But having said that, it's not just as an independent filmmaker you can survive. Sometimes the government needs, forest departments need people to document work for them. There are a lot of non-profit organizations, NGOs that work in the environment sector that look for people to document work for them. And in today's time, it's very easy to be a filmmaker because the technology is such.
yeah.
Anyone actually can be a filmmaker. What really sets two people apart is the way they tell their story. There is an engaging way of storytelling which really wants people to come, which makes people come back to the film again and again, take away a lot of understanding, apply that to
Mhm,
how they interact with nature. And
mhm,
then there's another style which is just documenting, or which is very there's advocacy, you know so there are a whole lot of genres again in, so to say, nature storytelling, in wildlife environment storytelling, that
mhm.
one can look at, explore, play around. In today's time, we're not bound by the rules of television. There's social media, which is uncensored. And
Yeah.
I tell everyone, exploit it. Because if you don't exploit it now, 2 years, 3 years, 6 months down the line, when it starts getting censored, you know, you won't be able to do much. You won't be able to make much of a difference. So
Yeah.
be creative in your storytelling and exploit the media that exists today to reach out to people.
Yeah, very, you explained it in details, and that's why we are using the social media platform to having these kind of discussions and the film screenings. And really, it was really great talking to you. I could have. There are so many questions which I still want to, ask to you, but time, we are over with the time. So.
We'll take them up in Mrityu Bhoj.
Yes, 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 yeah. So Akanksha, so Singh, it was really a delight talking to you. Thank you very much for becoming part of the program and joining the session. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me here. I've had a very long history with Vatavaran and always cherished it. So thank you so much. Yes.
Friends, this was Akanksha Sood Singh. We talked in a length about her filmmaking process, her projects, uh, and her thoughts about women working in green filmmaking. As you know that we are organizing a series of programs, and every day, you will have a great filmmaker talking with us about his or her work and the thought process. So please do go to our Facebook and YouTube channel and watch Akanksha Sood Singh's film on GIB, Great Indian Bustard, which is one of the most vulnerable bird species in India. And it is there for only 24 hours. It means you can watch it till tomorrow 11 o'clock. After that, it won't be there for a screening. But tomorrow again, we will have two very beautiful films for you, which we will be screening, and uh, this will be Arsenic, the Creeping Killer, and the Python Code. These two films are from a very profound filmmaker from Germany, Andreas, and we will have these films screened again for 24 hours. So please go and watch these two wonderful films. as you know, that we are doing these 18-day film screening, and I really want to express my gratitude to our program partners. That was Canadian High Commission in India and EU in India for and the project. Uh, I really want to express my gratitude to both of them for becoming part of this program and make it happen. Uh, so please do come tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and we will talk with some another great filmmaker. Have a great time. Thank you very much.